To make an alive idea, you have to internalize it. It has to become a part of you. You have to go through that same process of thinking around it and seeing what it really means and making it relevant to your life. Now, for my books, I read a lot of other people's books, and I'm constantly devouring information on websites, in newspapers, and all kinds of media. And I often have the feeling when I'm reading something that, yes, that's an interesting idea. I never thought of that. And then when I go deeper, though, and I think about it more and more and more, I start saying, this is actually a bit superficial. Actually, maybe the opposite might be true from what this person is writing. I don't think they thought through it very deeply. And the idea came to me that there are what I would call alive ideas and dead ideas. Let me explain a little bit what I mean by that. Now, what is alive is obviously something that is moving, that is constantly in flux, that is never static. What is alive is also quite complex. What an organism or our own emotions, they're never simple or easy. An event can have several causes for it behind it. So life is inherently complex. And what is alive has dimensionality to it. It's in 3 dimensions. We don't live in a flat world. So what is alive is something that can be seen from all different sides and is in 3 dimensions. And so when you have an idea, what I do when I have an idea is something comes to me, a thought, and I look at it and I go, that's kind of interesting. I'm interested in this idea. And then I go, wait a minute. Let me look at it from this side. Let me look at it from this angle. Maybe it's a little different from what I thought. Or no, maybe let me look at it from this angle and look at it there. And then it opens up another dimension. And then I go, maybe let's look at it from the reverse. Maybe the opposite is true. And as I take that process, the idea itself starts to come to life. It starts to have 3 dimensions. It starts to move. It starts to breathe. It has the complexity that life itself has. I compare it to a holographic image. A holographic image is something that moves around in 3 dimensions. We can see it on all different sides. It comes to life that way, as opposed to a flat image. And most people's ideas in books, I'm afraid to say, or in literature, or in websites, or wherever, tends to be that flat, singular image. And I think the greatest writers and the greatest thinkers create that kind of hologram. They make it come to life. To give you an example of what I mean, and the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to kind of advocate for you to bring that kind of dimensionality into your own thinking, and when you read something, to bring that kind of dimensionality to your own reading. So I'm writing a new book on the sublime, and I had a chapter in there about childhood, and I'm going into the section that you all know called the keys, and I'm trying to analyze what is sublime about childhood, and I'm trying to summarize my idea behind something basic. And the first thought that comes to me is, we humans are obsessed with childhood. We look back on it and we feel incredibly nostalgic for it. We have such golden memories. We kind of love children. They're so cute and adorable. And then I go, wait, no, actually that's not true at all. Our image of children is incredibly simple and sentimental. In fact, we don't respect children at all. We don't respect their kind of childish behavior. What we really respect is the adult who is serious, who has ideas, who knows how to use technology, who can go to work, who can create things. Children, they just live in this kind of playland. They don't have to deal with anything serious, etc., etc. We actually disrespect children in our culture to a very extreme degree. And we notice that because what's very noticeable in the 21st century is we're trying to hurry children up into adulthood. We're trying to immerse them in technology and in social media. We're kind of trying to make them mature before their age. And an 8-year-old now is probably the equivalent of like a 4-year-old back in my day. So my thought comes to me, no, we don't actually revere childhood. We kind of disrespect it. And I go, well, is that true? Is that idea true? Let me look at it in a different way. And the different way is, maybe the fact is we secretly envy children because when you're a child, your imagination is open, your mind is more fluid, you learn more quickly, you're not so rigid in your ways. And so really what's going on is we envy childhood. And as I take this process and I look at it here, and I go here, and I go here, and I go here, the idea starts to form, it starts to get better and closer to the reality. Now, I'm not so arrogant and full of myself to think that I capture the essence of what I'm trying to say. I'm always going to miss the mark. I know that, right? I'm not grandiose. I'm never going to quite get there. But the more I go through this process, the more I bring that holographic image into dimensions, and the more I create an alive idea as opposed to a dead idea. And so to repeat, a dead idea is kind of static. It's a cliche. It's a slogan. It's something that you read or somebody told you that you're not even thinking about. You're just sort of spewing it out. That is a dead idea. An alive idea has this kind of dimension, and it is closer and closer and closer to reality. So if you are ever creating something, if you are ever trying to give a talk or doing a book or any kind of activity like that, I advocate trying to constantly give dimensionality to your thinking, to go through that process that I just mentioned. A variation on this theme is what I call thinking around the corner. What do I mean about thinking around the corner? Normally, when we look at the world, we look straight on and we see what's before our eyes. This is what's right down the road. This is what we can see. What is around the corner, what is going to happen in the future, what might actually be coming towards us, we cannot see. And what we cannot see is very hard for us to contemplate. And so when you're planning something, when you're creating a strategy or a plan for your business, for your future, whatever, I tell people, and I tell this a lot in my consulting, to try and imagine this metaphor of thinking around the corner, of thinking about what you cannot see, about what you are not imagining, about what might happen in 3 months or a year that you have never even thought of. What Talib calls the black swans. There are going to be black swans that are going to be occurring. You don't know. Think around the corner. Plan and think with more dimensionality. What are you not seeing in the present? The final thing is, now that's another way of making something more alive, making your plan more alive. A dead plan, a dead strategy is one that's just linear. You go, this is what I want in the world. This is the business I'm going to start, and I'm just going to go there and I'm going to get the financing. I'm going to get what I want, blah, 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 blah. You just move straight ahead, and it's all based on your emotions and your desires. And that is kind of a dead strategy, a dead plan. Something that's more alive is more dimensional because life is never predictable. As I said, it's in continual flux. Only things that are dead stop moving. So life is always going to bring change. And if your plan and your idea incorporates that change, is more fluid, Napoleon called that strategy with branches. You have different branches. If your strategy has that, it becomes more dimensional and more alive. The final thing is how you approach other people's ideas, right? How you read a book, which is something that I deal a lot with, right? So there's a way of reading ideas that is alive, and there's a way of reading ideas that are dead. And when you read a quote or you read something interesting, if you just simply take it as it literally is and you go, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, all right, maybe. Then that idea doesn't enter into your body, doesn't enter into your mind, into your emotional framework. It becomes something dead. To make an alive idea, you have to internalize it. It has to become a part of you. You have to go through that same process of thinking around it and seeing what it really means and making it relevant to your life. I was reading a quote of Nietzsche, somebody whom I love very deeply and I read constantly. And he had a quote recently that really caught my attention. And the quote was, "Our destiny exercises its influence on us, even when, as yet, we have not understood its nature. It is our future that lays down the laws of our today." And at first glance, you look at that thought and you go, it's kind of woo-woo. It's sort of saying the future is kind of a part of the present, as if there's some kind of mystical sense about it. But then as I think about it deeply in terms of my own life, and I go back to when I was in my 20s, and I'm thinking about my 20s, and I'm going, yes, my future, who I am genetically and my experience, my destiny to become who I am as a writer was actually there when I was 20, and it was laying down the laws of what I was doing in the present. And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought about it in relation to my own life, the more his idea becomes alive inside of me. And that's how you want to read. You want to think like this, you want to plan like this, and you want to read like this. I came upon something very amusing. I do a Zen meditation, and I came upon I read constantly stories of Zen masters because they're fascinating. And I came upon the story that kind of encapsulates it in a weird way. And the story is as follows. There was this monk and this kind of Zen master. And the Zen master asked the monk, what is the import of the Buddha Dharma? What is the meaning of the Buddha Dharma? The Buddha Dharma means the essence of Buddhism, the nature, the law, the Dharma of Buddhism. And the monk, a little bit nervous, being put on the spot, he answers, when there are no clouds above the mountains, the moon is reflected in the heart of the waves. The master looks at him with an incredible scowl on his face, and he goes, are you going to be thinking that stupid thought until your hair turns white and your teeth turn yellow? And he says it with some vehemence that the monk starts sweating profusely and getting incredibly nervous. Then the master says, okay, monk, ask me the same question now. And the monk says, okay, master, what is the meaning of the Buddha Dharma? And the master says, when there are no clouds above the mountains, the moon is reflected in the heart of the waves. Precisely the same thing that the monk said, but the moment he hears the master say it, he's enlightened. He goes, whoa, what does that mean? It means that the same words in the monk were just dead words. He was just saying something that he thought was kind of clever. But in the master who is alive, who thinks, who knows what enlightenment is, who knows what Buddhism is, who knows what Zen is, those words suddenly become alive. So words aren't real or true by themselves. They depend on the degree of the effort you put into them to make them come to life, right? They can be just something that you spew, that you learn like the monk did, or they can become something incredibly vibrant. So if I just read you that quote of Nietzsche, it's kind of dead words. But if I read it now where I've internalized it and I feel it, it becomes something alive and very real. So my point here is to try and advocate very desperately, because this world, we're all dying by the lack of creativity, by the lack of linear thinking going on, by the lack of people putting effort into the great task of human nature, which is to think, to be conscious, and to be aware. And I'm advocating bringing more dimensionality to it. And I hope I've explained the way to do that. Thank you.